Today, I'm going to teach you the Stafford Gambit, an aggressive opening for black that's packed with deadly traps and tactical tricks. It starts with just a simple pawn sacrifice, but one mistake from white and the game can be over in minutes. It's perfect for beginners who want fast wins and love attacking chess. So let's begin. So, e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6. We have the Petrov defense on the board. White captures the pawn on e5, and now we play the move knight to c6. White trades off the knight, and we have the standard position of the Stafford Gambit on the board. We are officially a pawn down, white is simply a pawn up. In this position, white is majorly having 4 ways to continue the position. White can develop the knight to defend the pawn, white can push the pawn, white can push the pawn to d3 or push the pawn to f3, all moves with the same idea of defending the pawn on e4. First, starting with the move e5, pushing up the pawn, attacking the knight on f6. And now we put the knight in the center by playing the move knight to e4. In the Stafford Gambit, as we have sacrificed a pawn in the start of the game, our idea is only one: we are hunting for the king. The idea is basically to get all the pieces near the king and do a sacrifice on the f2 square and win the game. So after knight e4, white is once again having 2 ways to continue the position. White can play d3, attack the knight, or just d4, protect the center pawn. First, discussing d4, protecting the pawn on e5, just queen h4, attacking and threatening a mate on f2. White pushes the pawn to g3, attacking the queen. What could be any more natural move? And now knight cross g3, capturing the pawn. You can't really capture with the h pawn because the rook would be hanging. White have to capture with the f pawn, but now queen e4 check. White defends it, and now just the rook hangs. Black is just an exchange up with a completely winning position. Going back, if instead of d4, white plays d3, attacking the knight on e4, we are going to play the move bishop to c5, sacrificing the knight on e4. For example, white takes the knight on e4. We capture the pawn on f2, giving a check to the white king. The king cannot capture the bishop because the queen is hanging on d1. White have to play the move king e2. But now, bishop to g4 check. The king have to move, we can capture the queen, and black is completely winning. Going back, in this position, if white plays the move bishop to e3 to defend the pawn on f2, we can simply capture the bishop, f cross e3, and now queen h4 check. King e2 would lead to queen f2 checkmate, so white have to push the pawn to g3, but now simply knight cross g3, h cross g3, we can capture the rook. Black is an exchange up with a completely winning position. Going back, that's exactly what happens if white pushes the pawn to e5. If white plays the move f3, pushing the pawn to f3, defending the pawn on e4, we are going to play the move knight to h5. Looks like a very stupid move, moving the same piece twice. White simply plays knight to c3, following the basics of chess, simply developing the pieces. But now, queen to h4, check. It's a check. White is having 2 legal moves to make. White can either push the pawn attacking the queen or just move the king. First, looking at the move g3, just attacking the queen. Once again, knight cross g3 on the board. The pawn have to take the knight, and after queen cross h1, black is just an exchange up with a completely winning position. Going back, instead of g3, if white plays the move king e2, once again knight g3 check. It's the same trick, attacking the rook as well. White have to take the knight, but once again after queen cross h1, black is an exchange up with a total winning position. That's exactly what happens if white plays the move f3. If white plays the move d3, pushing the pawn in the center, defending the pawn on e4 makes sense, also opening up the dark square bishop. After d3, we are going to develop the bishop to c5. The idea still remains the same, we are developing the pieces, building pressure to do a sacrifice on the f2 square, going for the king. After bishop c5, white is having 3 main moves to play the position. White can play the move h3, taking away the g4 square from the knight. White can play the move bishop g5, developing the bishop, or white can play the move bishop e2, just developing the light square bishop. First starting with the move h3, pushing the pawn, taking away the g4 square from the knight. Now we are going to push the pawn to h5. Why? After h5, we are planning to play the move knight g4, doing a knight sacrifice to build up an attack on the white's king. White plays the move bishop e2. We play the move queen to d6. And white is like, fine, I'll just castle up. After castle, we are going to strike with... There are two ways to win the position. My favorite move, bishop cross h3, sacrificing the bishop. White takes the bishop and now queen to g3 check. The pawn cannot capture the queen because the pawn is pinned. It's a check. The king is forced to go on h1, queen h3 check, king g1, and now bishop to d6, threatening a mate on h2. The only way for white to defend is to play the move f4, blocking the bishop. But now, queen g3 check, king goes to h1, and now knight to g4, jumping in with the knight, threatening a mate on h2. The only way for white to continue the position is bishop cross g4, but after h cross g4, once again it's a checkmate and the game is over. Going back, bishop cross h3 is one of the good ways to win the position. Another good way you must remember is to play the move knight to g4, which is the main idea behind h5. After knight g4, we are threatening a mate on h2. White takes the knight on g4, and we simply take the pawn, once again threatening a mate on h2 as the rook has opened up. White can play the move g3 to stop the mate, but queen cross g3, and that's the checkmate as the f2 pawn is already pinned. You cannot capture the queen, and that's game over for white. Going back, in this position, instead of h3, if white plays the move bishop to e2, the idea is to simply castle up. We are going to play the move h5. The same idea. White castles up and now jumping in with the knight. Knight to g4. Now, in this position, if white captures the knight with the bishop, we can simply recapture it with the pawn, opening up the rook. The queen is going on h4, the bishop is going on d6, threatening a mate on h2. It's already very dangerous for white. Going back, if white plays the move h3, makes sense, attacking the knight. We are going to play the move queen to d6, threatening a mate on h2. Once again, white have to take the knight. Bishop cross g4, h cross g4, it is game over. G cross h3 is coming up, you can't capture the pawn, it would be a mate on h2, the game is over. If white captures with the pawn, we simply recapture with the pawn, opening up the rook file, queen h2 is once again a checkmate. The game is over. Now going back, that's exactly what happens if white plays bishop to e2. If white plays the move bishop to g5, developing the dark square bishop, pinning up the knight, and that's exactly what we are aiming for. Now we are going to play the move knight cross e4, sacrificing the queen. After knight cross e4, if white captures the queen, we capture the pawn on f2 with the bishop giving a check. The bishop is defended by the knight. The king is only having one square on e2, but after bishop g4, it's a checkmate and the game is over. That's it, a beautiful queen sacrifice. If instead of capturing the queen, if white captures the knight in this position, we capture the pawn on f2 with the bishop giving a check. The king cannot capture the bishop as the queen is hanging on d1. White have to play king e2, but after a check, we can capture the queen and the game is completely winning for black. Going back, if instead of capturing the knight, if white tries bishop e3, just going back with the bishop, defending the pawn on f2, we can simply capture the bishop, f cross e3, queen h4 check now this time, and after g3, as the king move, queen f2 would be a mate. White have to play g3, but now knight g3, h g3, we capture the rook, we had an exchange up with a completely winning position. Now, that's exactly what happens if white plays d3. Now, coming to the main move, if white develops the knight, developing a piece and also protecting the pawn on e4. Now we are going to play the move bishop to c5, just developing the bishop, putting pressure on the pawn on f2. White plays the move. Once again, white is having many moves. White can push the pawn to h3 once again, push the pawn to d3, or just develop the light square bishop. What could be more natural? First starting with h3, just taking away the g4 square from the knight. Now h5, once again, the idea is to play knight g4 whenever white castles up. Bishop e2, just developing the light square bishop. Queen d4, threatening a mate on f2. The only good way to defend is just to castle up. But now, Knight g4. The moment white castles up, we jump in with the knight, sacrificing the knight. After knight g4, white just captures the knight. Because our idea is pretty simple. We are threatening to capture the pawn on f2 now. White have to take the knight, and after h4, our idea is pretty simple. We want to play the move queen e5 and threaten a mate on h2. For example, if white plays d3. Queen e5, threatening a mate on h2. White defends with g3, but now queen cross g3, and that's a mate, as the f2 pawn is pinned by the king. You cannot capture the queen. Going back, for example, if white knew that this is the idea of black and white plays the move g3, which is the best move. Queen e5, with the same idea of queen h5 threatening a mate on h2. White sees this idea as well and plays the move king g2. If you play queen h5, white is having rook h1 and white is completely winning. So after king g2, we are going to play the move bishop cross f2, sacrificing the bishop now. After bishop cross f2, we are threatening queen cross g3, that would be a mate. White is having two main moves, like only two moves, rook cross f2 or king cross f2. Now starting with king cross f2, we can give a check with the rook. The king have to go on e3, or else queen cross g3 would be mate if the king goes on g1 or to e1. So king e3, but now queen cross g3 check, king to d4, bishop e6, just developing the bishop. The idea is still long castle, and the white king is going to get checkmated. Going back, if white captures with the rook, we play the move queen h5. As there is no longer rook h1 available, our idea is queen h2 check, queen h1, and eventually that would be a mate. For example, if white plays rook f4, we give a check on h2, the king goes to f1, and now first just taking the pawn on g3 with the idea of threatening a mate on h1 with the rook. White have to make a move, but now rook h1 is just an unstoppable mate and the game is completely winning for black. Going back, that's exactly what happens if white plays h3. If white plays the move d3, just pushing the d pawn, protecting the light square pawn, and just the idea is to develop the dark square bishop. We are going to play the move knight to g4. If we are getting the opportunity to jump with the knight, why not? We are threatening to capture the pawn on f2. The only good way to defend is to develop the bishop. But now knight cross e3, f cross e3, and now instead of capturing the pawn on e3, we are going to give a check with the queen. Queen h4 check, g3 attacking the queen, and now queen to g5. We are threatening to capture the pawn on e3 with the queen now. So white plays queen f3, trying to develop the queen. The idea here is, if black captures the pawn on e3 with the queen, white would love to trade off the queen. So we are going to play the move bishop to g4, developing the bishop, attacking the queen. White plays queen f4, let's have a queen trade. But now, let's do it. Queen cross f4. And now white is having two main moves to continue the possession, to capture with the g pawn or to capture with the e pawn. If white captures with the g pawn, just bishop cross e3, and black is simply better. Black is having the bishop pair. Material wise the possession is even, but we are having our own idea. The white king cannot castle up. We can play the move bishop f3 on the next move and the rook would be trapped. That's it, the game is over. And already f4 pawn is collapsing on the next move. Black would simply be a pawn now. Going back, if white captures with the e pawn, we are going to play the move bishop to f3, and guess what, the rook is simply trapped on h1. Black is completely winning. Going back, that's exactly what happens if white plays d3. If white plays the move bishop to c4, developing the light square bishop, we are going to play the move knight to g4, jumping in with the knight. White castles up, and now it's time to get all the pieces into the game. Queen h4, and simply the idea still remains the same. The idea is to checkmate on h2, and also at the same time we are threatening to capture on the pawn on f2. The only good way is to play the move h3 to defend the checkmate. But now knight cross f2. You capture with the rook, I can simply capture it back, I'm exchange up, completely winning. The queen is also hanging, so let's say white develops the queen. Queen to f3. But now, knight cross h3, it's a double check, the king is forced to move, king h2, and now knight to f2 check. It's a check. If the queen comes in between, I can simply take the queen and that's winning. If the king goes to g1, queen h1 checkmate, and the game is over. The knight is defended by the bishop and the queen is defended by the knight. The game is over. So with this, we have successfully got the idea how to play the Stafford Gambit with the black pieces. And I hope this video was very insightful, and this gambit is especially for beginners to maximum club level players. You can play this gambit or trap, which is like this gambit is full of traps. You can play this gambit if you are a beginner in your tournament games. If you're facing a beginner, I won't recommend this particular gambit if you're facing a strong player, because they know how to defend it as they are already a pawn up. But if you're playing a beginner or maximum a club level player, this gambit can be very useful to score some easy win, fast wins, and if you love attacking chess, definitely it can be a good gambit. So yeah, with this, I'm signing off. I hope that you guys have enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like, share, and smash that subscribe button. I'm going to see you in the next one. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.